people would call me a musician in interviews or whatever, and I'd have to correct them. I felt I'd have to correct them. I'm not a musician because I don't know. It's which is so funny. I'm literally in there as a, they're playing my song that I've written on the radio. I'm like, no, that's not. I can't do that. Because I didn't have a sense. I didn't feel like I was allowed to be these things that I wanted to be.
Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of 30 Minute Call, proudly presented by the Canberra Theatre Centre. My name is Joe Gleeson, and today we are getting our old host back on the show, but this time as a guest. Yes, Chris Endrey is actually putting together 8 episodes of a variety show called The World From Here with Chris Endrey as part of CTC at Home. This is Canberra Theatre Centre's free live streaming offering. But not just to chat about that. Chris is great to chat about all sorts of different things because he's a lovely guy, but he's also very intelligent. He's eloquent. His creativity just seems to know no bounds. It's so versatile. And also his outlook on the world and all sorts of different things intrigues me. He intrigues me. In this honest yarn, we discuss self-doubt, nudity, bad ideas, incredible high points, and a recent incredible low point as well. If you dare, come with me on this journey and let's put him on the other side. Chris Endrey, this is your 30-minute call. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. He has rejoined the podcast. Chris Endrey, hello!
I just had no idea this is what it was like on the other side.
Underwhelming.
No, I feel more powerful,
Yeah.
You ostensibly have to have some air of professionalism.
That's right.
Direction, whereas I can just say whatever I want. This is great. I can see why my guests were so obstinate.
We did sort of go have that conversation about, is it weird getting our old host back on so soon to have a chat? Are people just going to think we're being lazy? But no, there is actually a genuine reason. I don't know. It's kind of like is this close to like podcast Inception? It's like a host within a host. Anyway.
Not until I start talking about my other podcast.
Yes, which we will actually at some point, because I do want to talk about that. So the reason we've got Chris on, and I'll talk about this early in our episode, because Chris is actually tomorrow, as we're recording this. Tomorrow we'll get to see the very first episode as part of our Canberra Theatre Centre streaming service, our CTC at Home it's called. Chris is doing a series of shows. It's a variety show called The World From Here with Chris Endrey, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to say that straight out of the gate. I haven't even seen episode 1, but I'm looking forward to it. And Chris Endrey, I'm hoping you're looking forward to getting it out there into the world for everyone to see. Yeah.
Oh yeah, beyond excited, really. I mean, it's kind of a dream project for me. Well, I mean, I hope it literally is. I created the brief, so it's exactly the type of show I wanted to make. So, it's a huge challenge, and I think like one thing that I hope isn't clear is that everyone who's working on this show, including myself, is doing a job in it that isn't their primary job or something that they've even necessarily done before at all.
Oh, right.
So I think that just means that we're not tainted by, the academy and its ideas of how you're meant to, look into the camera when you're talking or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's maybe I'm not sure what brief for the show you'll give in your intro, but it's a window for exploring a few topics that I'm interested in, and I find that whenever I see other shows or anything, artworks where people are authentically exploring something that genuinely is of interest to them, there's a compelling infectiousness to that, and so I hope that other people feel that with this show and come on the journey.
And whenever people are listening to this will be relevant, because even if you're listening to this podcast a couple of months down the track, you'll still be able to go back and watch these episodes, and you'll be able to find them through the Canberra Theatre Centre website or Facebook page, unless, it's 200 years in the future, in which case maybe it's not there anymore. I'm not sure.
No, I assume that these episodes will become canon of humankind's artistic output, and put on all the unpersoned drones that we send into space as an example of the heights that we've achieved.
Yeah, definitely.
And they'll be funny.
Yeah, and what does the rest of the world look like in 200 years from now? Just quickly on the spot.
I don't know, 8 degrees warmer.
Yeah.
Other than that, people have got a different kind of PTSD.
Something new and exciting.
Yeah. I don't know. There's some sort of like weaponized, like defense system around the water that you have in your household, if you have a household.
Yeah. But this format,
and the Geelong Cats will have won like 50 more premierships.
Always back to football. This format isn't completely foreign to you, because you did, of course, have your own variety show here in Canberra. Well, how many years ago was that now? I didn't write down a year for that.
That's a good question, Joe. I wouldn't know. It's probably 6 years ago was our last episode, I think.
Yeah, right.
And it's funny that it's been so long, because I really enjoyed that journey and learned a huge amount from it. And I feel like we made a show that was really good. Like that was in Canberra Tonight you're talking about.
In Canberra Tonight, yeah.
The last episode we had, I interviewed Andrew Denton.
Huge.
That was a show. There was a different show to this in that it was for a live setting, and obviously now we can't have live stuff at the moment.
Yes.
So it's not completely alien, but it is funny doing pieces to camera, because normally I kind of figure my primary performance art is for a live audience, and because I get a lot of energy from the audience and sharing things with people on the spot. And also, I guess you would have had this experience. When you're doing something live, you don't think about it again once you've done it, unless it was particularly heinous. But when you're doing something to camera, you're going to do the best. You're trying to do the best version possible. But under the time constraints that I've got, in terms of the amount of content that we're producing in this show each week, it's kind of impossible to get more than one take of basically everything.
Wow.
So
that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool in a way. I'm sure it's cool for the people who are watching. Like, oh, this is pure and uncut realness. But for me, I'm like, oh no, I could have said that much better.
Yeah, but no, I think that is kind of not, because it is going to be broadcast to everyone, and that will make it feel more real, more live, more genuine, and it's perfect in its imperfection. I think that'll be great.
Something I'm weighing up whether or not to do is to be on the comments line, while it's live.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Does that add or take away? I'll have made a decision by the time the listeners are hearing this podcast. But
yes,
I'm grappling with the duality of if I'm typing, then people are like, hang on a sec, he's not there. We're not in the same place. But also, it's fun to have an extra resource and say,
yeah,
just be able to interact with it.
Yeah.
Be cheeky. Also, one of my favorite things to do, because I write opinion pieces now and then, not often, because I think that they're a scourge for the brain to write opinion pieces regularly. Only write it when you really have earned an opinion.
Right. Yeah.
And it's impossible to do that regularly, I think. But when I do write them, when people comment under an article, they don't expect the author to come back and say, shut up, here's why you're completely right, or to defend themselves.
Yes.
Because it's like that, it's an anonymity, because it's not like the famous, the well-known journalists are sitting there just rebutting every criticism, because they go mad because they get them all day. Yeah. But I publish so rarely, and I really mean the things that I write, so that when the comments do come up, I love to say,
jump in, yeah.
That's outrageous. And I kind of feel like I want to be on hand. If someone's watching the show and they're like, that's stupid, I'm like, oh yeah, you're stupid. Checkmate. Like, oh no, that's the guy.
Oh no. There's the actual human behind that human.
He's coming for me.
Yeah, which is a thing that people always forget on social media.
Of course.
Every single second of every single day, it's just throw an opinion as harsh or as nice or as in between as you want, and they're just
It's a painful timeline, isn't it, Joe?
It is. It is.
There's a duality of meaning, timeline. You can listen back, you'll get it later.
I want to talk a bit about just your journey as an artist, as a creative human being, as well, while we've got you. I wrote down this question because, I don't know, sometimes I write questions because I think, well, I have an answer to that, so maybe you will too. So my question is, do you have like your earliest memory of doing something creative, of being a performer and going, hey, this is cool, and that sort of lit a bit of a fire inside of you? Because I remember when I was in year 3, my teacher at St. John's Primary in Dubbo, Ms. Jones, once a week would allow us to break off into little groups and create little plays that we'd perform to everyone else in the class. And I discovered that me being a goofball and making people laugh was kind of like the most fun thing that I've ever done. And sort of everything sort of, I don't know, changed from there, because I was like, oh, I think I want to do this like all the time. Was there a moment for you like that?
No, and it's one that I hear a lot, because it's something that particularly comedians, they'll have a stark moment that they'll remember with, hang on, I'm funny, this is great.
Yeah, right.
I don't really have those moments. Like it could be because I didn't have a very happy childhood, so I consequently don't have a great memory of growing up.
Yeah, right.
And and also, I guess, look, I don't have I don't have any inherent reverence for authority without being able to see its path to legitimacy, and I don't have a particularly proud or strong sense of myself. So I guess from those two things, like a lot of the common performance tropes and incentives, like live. But I didn't even really conceive of myself as an artist until the last sort of 4 years, despite having lived and worked as one.
Yeah, wow.
For the last 10 years, or even 11 years now. I remember it was something in the band Fun Machine that kept coming up, where Beck, who was my partner at the time and drummer in the band, she kept calling me out because people would call me a musician in interviews or whatever, and I'd have to correct them. I felt I'd have to correct them. I'm not a musician, because I don't know, which is so funny. I'm literally in there as they're playing my song that I've written on the radio. I'm like, no, that's not. I can't do that. Like, because I didn't have a sense. I didn't feel like I was allowed to be these things that I wanted to be. I don't know. It's really funny. So no, I don't have a particularly like formative moment. I guess like, it is something that has always been pretty easy for me to do. Like, which is not necessarily good, because when something's easy to do, you don't interrogate why you're doing it as necessarily, as automatically. And it's sort of taken time to understand what it is I want to get out of it. And also, like, anyone out there who's listening, everyone's good at something. Whatever it is you may be good at, that doesn't mean that should be what you do. Like, I feel like there are a lot of parts related to my skill sets that are things that I really detest. Like, I feel like I would find it really easy, for example, to be, in question time doing debates and coming up with quick counter arguments and quick replies and witty gags and whatever. And but I wouldn't find a higher satisfaction from doing that work at all. Yeah. And similarly, even just in performance land, like, I've been on the precipice of doing ABC shows a couple of times.
Right.
And I've been on the precipice of so many different jobs, and like unconsciously like parachuted myself out of them because it's not actually what I want to be doing. And even getting to the point of like being about to get that job is something that I should have interrogated and not put myself to do, because there's such a big difference between can and should.
Yeah. It's great that you've got that.
There's been a big cost of that. Well, yeah, it's great on the one hand, but you can't shun everything.
No, you can't. But also, it's there's a lot of power and worth in being able to realize that saying no to some things is is the best thing for you. And
I think there's a reason that so many philosophies from so many different cultures center around the value of truth and knowing yourself.
Yeah,
I think there's a universality to that.
Do you set yourself goals? Are you one of these people that sort of writes things down and puts them up on walls and says, I'd like to be able to achieve?
No, I'm the opposite. I really struggle to think of what it is that I actually want out of stuff, and consequently struggle to work towards it, because you can't. It's something that all successful people have in common is they define what it is, and then they know what it is that they're going for, so they can shape all their behaviour to match it. But no, I think my goals are mostly unspoken ones related to lifestyle and closeness with people.
Oh, great.
It's not like I'm necessarily achieving those either, but but no, like some people will like athletes will put their favorite athlete on the wall and be like, I'm going to do that, and then they got that's a common story that for the top elite athletes that growing up I had that, and I knew that I wanted to win that championship or whatever. No, I'm absolutely not like that. And I think that sort of shows, because I'm pretty splayed in the types of work that I do. I mean, maybe your listeners won't necessarily know, but this type of show is the first time I've done this type of show. Normally, I put out an album 2 months ago. Then,
well, that's right. I mean, if I could give people a little bit of a background, you've been a part of a sex pop band. In case people want to try and pigeonhole it, which I think is difficult. Fun Machine was the name of the band. You're a solo musical artist, even though you don't like calling yourself a musician. I hope you do like calling yourself a musician now. You have...
I do, but I'm still wary if there are what I consider to be real musicians in the conversation. So maybe I don't, which is outrageous, really.
Well, yeah, I mean...
a lot to think about here, Joe.
You've been... There is. You've been a public servant. You've done stand-up comedy. You've done MC work. You're the host of a podcast. No, you were the host of this podcast, but you've also got another podcast. You were nominated for also. I mean, not that this was sort of like a job or something that but it's worth noting. You were nominated for Local Hero in the Australian of the Year Awards last year for the ACT. It goes on and on and on. There's just all sorts of strings to your bow, and you're an intriguing character, Chris. I think and I really like your energy, and it's really fun to be around you, because you just never know what you're going to be up to next. There's always something popping up. Oh, Chris is involved in that as well. Chris is involved in that. Where do you where do you get your most satisfaction? Do you like when you create things, when you stand back and look at them? And I know we've sort of said before we started recording that you are a perfectionist, and I suppose that's true in a lot of people. They are their own harshest critic. But after you create something and finish it, and do you get that nice sense of satisfaction when you've completed something, like say your solo album, when you finish recording that? Was that like a bit of a high for you?
There's kind of two questions there. The first one was, where do you get the joy from it, or sound like you're going towards something like that? Yeah. Look, the solo album was probably the first time, that was probably the hardest I've worked on a project, and the one of which I'm most proud of. And that's probably the first time I sat down and so to listen to it, to decide it was done. Louis Montgomery, my producer, and I, we'd worked very closely. And as when you create vulnerable work, you need to have such a high level of trust that you really are friends through the work, and you become closer through it as well. And we'd been working on it for, I guess, across the span of 2 years, and then when we, there's so many small changes you can make to an album constantly. Songs are never done. They're just left. And so it was sort of, we had a feeling that it was there, and then we went up to the top of Telstra Tower, where we both had a gold membership. It's not bad. We're like real life shit posters. but with our existence. We went up to the top of Telstra Tower and sat there, pressed play on our phones at the same time with our headphones in, and then watched the sunset.
Whoa, cool.
Over Belco, I guess, and then at the end of it, we turned to each other and like nodded and like, it's done. It's good. We did it. It's there. And that was a real, that reminds me of the description that you gave of, being at the end of something and being satisfied and enjoying it. But at the same time, that was not the peak. That was not even close to the point of peak enjoyment of that project.
No.
For me, my favorite points are living at the edge of when you start bleeding the imagination space into the real world.
Yeah.
Before it gets too real world, like too marked by the constraints of, whatever the tools that you have to get the job are, or, which may be your budget or your skills or your time or whatever it is, other people. Just starting to dream and then being given a space into which to do it. That is absolutely my favorite, especially doing it with other people where there's like alignment with what you're trying to do. And there's something like almost like transcendent or divine about that. It feels just so, I don't know. Look, for me, that's the point at which I feel most alive. And it doesn't really matter what discipline or what, it doesn't matter what form that work is taking. And that work can exist like as, like as just sitting around and being like, well, what could we do with this football game, for example? Or like, what could we do, for someone's to celebrate someone for a dinner or something. I don't know, like I don't know, or holiday. Like I don't know. I don't really. I feel weird giving these examples because they're not ones that I actually pour the same energy into. But for in the course of the work that I do, that's just as true for the album as it is for this show. And one of the first things I did for the show was immediately fill the book with sort of all the big ideas, and it was so stark how, having not been able to work for 3 months or something because of the obvious, everything being shut down, I just immediately felt alive again, and I realised how profoundly depressed I had been because there was no way to drag the imagination space and all the sort of hoping and dreaming I'm constantly doing into anywhere where it had any value. And so it just sort of felt like being, it really felt like being dead in a way. So
wow, because I have spoken to a few artists during this time and sort of said, how's this been for you? How hard has it been? But no one has sort of said anything quite as profound as what you've just said about, how depressed and how just, feeling dead is a huge, that's a massive statement. And
not said lightly either. Those other artists, they got like stable jobs or something.
Well, yes. I think they had some other sort of things that they were doing apart from touring and that sort of thing. While things had fallen apart and life was very different, it wasn't complete shutdown for them. So I think they probably had a different perspective on it for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm also like spoiled and cursed in that, like from that earlier conversation about having an understanding of why it is that I do what I want. I feel like the things I do in life are sort of increasingly and very, very closely aligned to exactly sort of who I am and how I want to be expressing life in the world.
Yeah.
And so then, losing the way of doing that. You can imagine. I mean, that's a crisis for anybody. So it's kind of like, there's a lot of course, losing your job is brutal for anyone, anytime. But you can imagine, like, if you lost your job and then also lost how you connect with your friends and also lost how you connect with the world and also lost how, so it was pretty heavy and pretty, despite that, I'm still pretty pleased with how I handled that. I don't know. It's but it feels indulgent to talk about it because obviously, there are so many different material distresses that people are under at the moment from this situation and others. But but yeah, like, I already have a pretty high risk appetite and like threshold. Like I'm below the minimum wage for like 10 years now.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, below the poverty line. And like, sort of accept all these other things. And so then to have like the thing that this is like all for taken away with an indeterminate future, which I guess like turns to like, you can then imagine how excited I am to have basically, a dream gig for me in creating this show, which is, connecting people, expressing ideas that I think are underrated in the public sphere, creating, sharing ideas, sharing space, creating a format for celebrating. It's like, it's a total dream gig.
That's awesome. I'm really stoked for you for that. If I hadn't,
I'm just glad you didn't interview me a month ago, Joe. Well, 2 weeks ago. God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. It's not like this is going to be a small thing for you to put together. Like you've got 8 weeks of shows to put together, and it's going to be wild. But it sounds like you're really just going to be in your element. That's great.
I also suspect that the next time I grow out my hair into its natural color, it'll just be completely grey.
yeah, great. Hey, who do you look? Do you look to anyone apart from yourself to sort of, if someone says in your life or in your sort of close group of family, friends, your girlfriend, do you look for any of them to sort of say, hey, that's really good, and then oh, that must be all right if they're saying it's good.
My first instinct answer is no, probably because I might not hear it. To be honest, I don't think I could have come to this point of confidence in being able to forge my own artistic path if I didn't feel like I had for myself the best idea of what was good and not good, because so many of the things that I pitch or say out loud, like the first response of any rational person would be like, well, that's dumb, or even worse, like people that just think that anything you do is great, that's a disaster.
True.
So I don't really look for it from other people.
Right.
Yeah,
cool.
Because I think you have to, like, you only have your own experience, and if you're constantly anchoring it to other people, even if it's good, even if it's bad, it's not a path to, to peace for yourself in any way, because nobody is constantly getting good feedback, and nobody constantly deserves good or bad feedback. So I think it's just all more information, but the ultimate weight has to be with yourself, and if you don't try and own that as a sort of responsibility for yourself, I don't think the happiness that you have or the experiences that you have are going to be as robust or like well mapped to the reality, because ultimately, you don't go to sleep at night with someone else's thoughts in your head.
Yes, well said. Let's completely change direction. I want to talk about clothing.
Did I dissatisfy you with that direction?
You did. This is all your fault, Chris.
Okay, clothing, did you say?
Clothing. I want to talk about clothing. I want to talk about lack of clothing, because you've had a bit of experience with this in the past, with Fun Machine, with your own personal works. Back in 2017, you performed naked on a piano.
I think in 2017, or maybe it was 2018, I did about 30 or 40 nude shows in a year in various different guises. And after that, I retired the idea. I was like, hang on a sec,
I'm done.
I don't think. Yeah.
Are you naturally comfortable naked, or is this something that was for?
So I wasn't.
No,
I absolutely wasn't.
Yeah. Wow.
And I can, like anybody, see that that's an irrational. A socialized response in a lot of ways.
But like to get up in front of an audience night after night, if you're not naturally comfortable in being nude, makes it even more powerful, doesn't it? Wow.
Well, look, I use the joke that the two skills that any great performer has are, deep empathy, so you can see how your audience is doing, so you can understand, get some good feedback on how it is that you're going, and the capacity is totally dissociate, so that you can put yourself in like situations and emotional performative states that are not ones related to how you're currently feeling.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know if I don't know how strongly I feel that. I never really interrogated it. It was mostly a gag, but and I think we could all agree it's extremely funny.
That's great.
But there's actually two different threads for the nude performing in terms of reason. One was I was doing my first album. Lost and Found is a really intensely personal one, and it wasn't one that I was going to record or release. It was they're just it's a body of work that I had written for myself, really, to sort of process some stuff. And I was never expecting to release it, but my bandmate from Paint on Paint, Hannah Beasley, her partner is a diplomat, and they went on posting for a few years, and I wasn't ready for the impact of like losing that creative play space. I hadn't really prepared. I don't think I'd really reckoned with it as a reality. And so I just immediately was like, oh God, I got to do something. So I picked this up as a project to do. And that album, because it was so intensely personal and sort of stripped back, it kind of felt like a lie to perform in clothes, and that sounds dumb, like it's a conceit, but I share it with you now because it is the actual truth. Like I really, because like I think the thing that's missing is when people talk about bands or or musicians, or they dress up a lot. Like everyone that's putting themselves in the public sphere is dressing up in some way or another. And so for this one, I was like, it didn't feel right to.
I'm not going to put a wrapping on this at all. It's just
and I couldn't look. It was such a. I really fear sounding like a conceited artist, generally, because I feel like it's such a easy hat to wear, and it's so easy to inflate your self-importance through the stuff that you do in a way that's not useful. But those performances were so hard that I would like often just the norm was I'd completely disappear from the venue afterwards and not take any feedback, or well wishes, or like talk to friends or anything. And I didn't do too many of the performances either, and so most of those performances were clothed. Some of them weren't, but like I just it was too much. And I think I actually heard a great lesson from Kristevska. She's a playwright. So she's a director theatre director in Melbourne.
Oh, okay.
And I only heard this advice secondhand. I subsequently met her, but the advice was for her, she always cares for her actors by not, the sort of trope is that you should really bear yourself down and, be, give it all. And she's like, that's not true, because that's not sustainable and that's not healthy for the individual. You can't just constantly batter yourself around as though it doesn't matter. It does matter. And I think hearing that advice sort of sat in my unconscious, and then subsequently, so all these other nude shows I did, like once people hear that you're happy to get nude, like, nudity is such a novelty thing that there's a reputation that spread. So, I was a host of a show called Unclothed People Doing Things at Smith's every month, and ended up being roped to some other nude things. And
I had no idea about that one. Okay.
Yeah, right. I sort of realised, I was like, hang on a sec, this is 3 hours of me emceeing for $100 in the nude. Like, what am I doing? Like, there was one show that I wrote and gave across an hour a lecture about Finnish sauna culture in the nude for $50. Like, I did it twice.
Oh, wow.
It was too much. Like, it was, there was kind of like a novelty commodity to it, and I was not getting as much out of it as I was giving, and that's that's probably been the true characterization of most of my performance career until recently. Yeah, till very recently.
Yeah, that's great. Now that clothing, is back on. This is a random question. If you could pick one outfit to wear forever, for the rest of your life, you had to wear it every single day, what would you pick?
Is this a performance outfit or just for my own self?
Just for your own self.
Definite short shorts.
Because you are the master of the short short.
No, I just like them. There's nothing to master. They're just comfortable.
You just put them
for
on.
me. Yeah. It's really
relax.
very simple. Yeah. You don't need to have a wiki how on it. That's a good question. Short. I like my short red shorts. I'd wear them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. So I have very flat feet. I hate wearing shoes though, but I need to do stuff.
Yeah. They are practical.
Have my orthotics. Well, I need to have my orthotics. Unfortunately,
okay.
if I walk around without them, even
you're a very tall
just
man.
like 2K in a day or something, it feels like I'm walking on knives. It becomes so bad, which is really sad for me because I love being barefoot. So I probably have to wear some sort of shoes or orthotics, whatever's comfortable, and then. Yeah. Because I dress differently to, I guess the median of my body type. I often get asked about, fashion questions or clothes or whatever, but I actually give almost zero thought to it.
Yeah, right.
Say for example, the first episode that's going up in the show, I'm wearing what I was wearing to the theatre that day, and I didn't think about what I was going to wear. So I just I think it comes across as more aware and statementy than it is because I have a high appetite for enjoying myself. And so my first instinct for stuff is why would I pick the thing that's not fun when I can pick the thing that's fun?
That's super fun.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your other podcast because I really like it. And I think it's something for if people are listening to this podcast, obviously they like podcasts, so they'll probably want to check out some other ones. It's called Rank Ideas, where you and your friend Nick go through potentially all of the ideas that have ever happened ever. Might be hard for you to get through all of them. Yeah. And rank them all from best to worst. And you rank them against each other as you go along. So obviously the list is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and things get slotted into that list, and it's really great.
Well, I mean, if we knew how the list would go and then could rank them like that, we wouldn't need to do the podcast. We'd just present the list, But unfortunately, you have to interrogate things before you know whether they're as good as whether shoes are as good an idea as debt.
Have you? Yeah, and they're just so. How can you even? At first thought, you're like, how can you rank shoes against debt? They're so completely different. How can you even compare them to each other? But you guys managed to do that and have a bit of back and forth. Are there any of these ideas that are your favourites that you've really enjoyed a nice debate on?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said debate. That's one of the ones that's changed my life the most, actually. Because it's just so nice to have a window. We're not doing it as experts. We don't pretend to know everything in the world. Nobody does, and nor should they pretend. And so we find an idea organically, and then interrogate it without preparation. But because Nick and I are both people who, through personality type, have put ourselves in positions to take a bit of time thinking about the world. It's really satisfying to pull apart, and I really appreciate Nick's wisdom. As a friend, and then getting to it's a project that I love. My favorite in terms of impact to me is realizing that debate is actually trash. There are so many marquee ideas that are sort of the foundation of so many lives and institutions and processes, and that through just the mildest interrogation actually turn out to be really suboptimal and often extremely harmful. And so I think if you look at the list as it stands, it'd be quite surprising to see some of the lists, all the ones that are at the bottom, because they're ideas like ideology, faith. I don't have the list to hand, so I can't. I don't have a very recall, but they're things that people define their whole lives around, and just sitting around, you can easily. There are plentiful examples of why they're terrible, and then the things that are upweighted are also interesting too. The things that sit up the top, like sharing and story and jokes. But I think debate was the one that was most shocking to me, because I never really thought about. I should expand upon this a bit to say why. But debate is it's a way that so many of our ideas are put to us and tested in public, and it's as a contest, which is, of course, if you're sitting around talking to someone, trying to get to the bottom of something and understand it, it's probably the last way you want to do it, because it inherently doesn't have listening or adopting any adopting in any external perspective into its nature, because of it's so catchy as well. Like, you know, like for the show that I'm doing at the moment, you know, it would be so easy to be like, well, let's get how good would it be if you'd see Nick Kyrgios debating Dawn Fraser about, you know, what Australian is, or something. Like, I don't know, just anything. Like, it's because it's so catchy. It's like so much inherently more interesting, but it is doomed. Like, it's you do not get anything approaching the best understanding of a topic by just seeing, you know, the worst versions of each archetype butt heads, and then, you know, like the Higgs, like the Hadron Collider, just watching the particles fall out of it. That may be interesting. Why not just look at the particles? We don't have to, you know, we don't have to have this adverse structure. But since interrogating it, I've sort of had an eye out for it, and I've seen that it's actually everywhere in the foundation of. So, like, it's the first way in which we will encounter many topics, and not indicative of how most people think about things or how most people interact with the world. So that was a marquee one. Yeah, there are many others. An episode this week's gone out as rights, and I'm nervous to even recommend it because it was a conversation that I wasn't expecting to have, and I think it's one of our best episodes. Very interesting.
Wow. Yeah. It's a great time to be having that chat. That's really cool. Look, I won't keep you for too. I mean, I could talk to you probably all day, Chris, but I won't keep you for too much longer. I do want to talk about that experience of going over to Hungary to record your solo album with your producer. What was that experience like? Just being in overseas. Being in this house, I believe, that also had...
It's a studio in the countryside.
Oh, okay. So the house wasn't actually...
Dedicated studio.
Yes, as a
it
part
had
of
apartments underneath that we were staying in.
Right, yeah. Okay. So you were able to fully throw yourself into it. What was that experience like? It must have been...
Yeah, sublime. Yeah. It would be, I think, no exaggeration to say, an absolute, you know, top highlight of all of life. It was... you know, there aren't too many things that happen where I think, maybe it'll never be that good again. But that is that period was one. So we were. It was Louis and I and my second cousin, a musician called Chasadi Gerge. We were in the space for 2 weeks, and it's a world-class studio, like you know, like a full Steinway grand piano. So like I don't know how much they're worth, like $250,000 or something crazy like that. And it had been in the room, sound people will care about this, it had been in the room for like 30 or 40 years as well. So it hadn't been moved. It's just so, it was incredible. Yeah, right. You know, the place itself was in the countryside, Hungarian countryside. So, you know, isolated in a way. My second cousin, Gary, he didn't... tell us that he wasn't actually going to be there the whole time. I booked him to be there the whole time. And on day one, he was having a conversation with Louis, and he said, "Yes, I'm playing in the Siget Festival for, Thursday to whatever." And I looked at him, I was like, "What?" He said, "This is news to you." Oh, I'm sorry. Man, because he's like the best musician I know. So wow. I was, but it was good because it meant that you know, I instead had to rise up and, you know, play drum parts and things like that I wouldn't have otherwise done. I would have just handed over to him. So, but as a project, you know, it was like going there with, you know, maybe 40% of an idea of what we were going to do, and then it was like flow state over 2 weeks. It was like. It was so perfect. Like, I have been meaning to write up the experience because I really feel like I cracked something that would be like significantly useful to other people doing the same practice, which is like the processes that we had in terms of the how we went into each space. Like, there was basically no wastage, which when you're creating stuff, and especially in the studio, is insane. Like, basically every session we used all of what we did, and wow. Like I said, only 40% of it was written going in, so it's really something. And it was also just a delight to do, like, because the days were long, but they were managed well. Like, you know, we'd get up at like 9 or 10, or we start at like 10 and then go for a few hours and then have like a 2-hour lunch, which we'd cook because we weren't near shops or anything, so we cook everything there together and eat together.
Awesome.
And then back in the studio, and then in the evening it was summertime, so about still light until like 9 or something, so we'd go like 7:30 or something, we'd go for a run through like the countryside. So it was like peach orchards, we saw baby deer.
Oh my God.
It was idyllic, yeah.
It sounds the greatest.
Yeah, and then back in, and then a night session as well. Go to finish up when it's done, but about 1 o'clock or something like that. Then big restful sleep, having done all the exercise and the brain work, and then back into it. It was really like, there was sort of like inbuilt, I guess meditative elements and kind elements and like comfort that just really elevated the whole experience to, I think, for me to create a work that I'm super proud of, because it's it's bigger than I grew through it and grew to make it, which is true of anything that I've made it, but this one in particular is like feels more whole in its directions, and I really like the work as a result.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, it's available sort of anywhere you would normally look for music, so do go and check it out. It's a great album. Also,
I just perform under Endrey, so if you just search for my Endrey,
and we'll also obviously keep an eye out for all of these amazing episodes of The World From Here with Chris Endrey via CTC at Home, the Canberra Theatre Centre's live streaming offering. And also, we desperately want to keep an eye out for Canberra Vision. If you are listening and you are not from Canberra, you may not be familiar with Canberra Vision, but this is an absolute staple in, I guess, the Canberra calendar, where a whole bunch of locals and creatives all get together, create some really fun songs for a night of fun. And, you can kind of probably imagine from the name, Canberra Vision, sort of where it's sort of sitting. It's a lot of fun, and obviously with everything that's been going on, we weren't able to see it thus far this year. But is there, if things miraculously change later in the year, do you think you'd be able to sneak one in 2020, Chris?
No interest at this point. I think it's like, we're back on the 2021 schedule.
Right. Yeah.
And I was offered the chance to do it as a streaming version.
Right.
And that's actually why I'm here, because the theatre contacted me and said, would you do Canberra Vision as a streaming thing? And I thought, it could be good, but it would be nowhere near as good, and I'm not really interested in doing, it's so good. It's such a such a precious thing, and I'm not interested in having anything that takes away from the best version of it and continuing to make it better. So we'll be back in 2021.
Yeah, great. Super.
Hopefully, all things cracking well.
Well, mate, thanks so much for having a chat to me. I do love our catch-ups, and best of luck with the show. I hope it all goes really, really well, and you continue getting so much enjoyment and pleasure out of it, mate. It's really great to hear that you're creating again and doing awesome stuff again.
Yeah, well, this is week 1. I'm excited to see where it is in week 8, because there's so much to learn for all of us, and hopefully it could be providing something that's genuinely valuable. I hope if you're listening to this interview, you've already enjoyed an episode. Keep watching.
Yeah, absolutely. The World From Here with Chris Endrey. Keep an eye out for it, and all of the other amazing creative things that Chris Endrey is no doubt going to be putting out into the world in the future. Mate, thanks so much for the chat, and we'll talk soon, hey?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks so much for having me.